Now that we have our knot and we have our skirt draped and trued, we have some information to start deciding what we want to do about that sash. So I think I want the gathering to be about, I don't know, let's just test some stuff out actually. So 2 inches is the finished length of my knot. So let's say I gather up 4 inches of fabric into 2 inches. How do I think that looks? I feel like it's kind of anemic when I look up at my inspiration. So 4 inches doesn't seem like enough. Let's try. This is 6 inches over from the edge of my fabric. This is a 2-inch wide ruler. So if I take 6 inches of fabric and gather that up into 2 inches, what do I think? Better, but I feel like the inspiration looks even fuller than that. So that was 6 inches. Let's try 8. So that's 8 inches. So now this is 4 times the size of my little knot. I feel like we're getting there, but I still feel like I want more. So let's do 10 inches. And then gather that into the 2-inch space. So I think I like that. So 10 inches into my 2-inch space. So let's just try putting that on the form and seeing what that looks like. So this is my selvage, and I'm going to measure over 10 inches and give it a little snip. And tear. So that's 24 inches, 26, 28. So that's 28 inches right there. Give it a little snip. And then go over here. Gather up my 10 inches and put it there. So, let's see. I feel like it looks fine at the top. I'll just kind of roughly gather it up into like a 2-inch space. So I feel like up at the top, that looks fine, but the bottom looks pretty sad. So another thing that I tried move some stuff out, was drafting a circle skirt. So in our draping book, they talk about circle skirts on page 185. And the information is amazing. I don't think I want a full circle because I think the sweep would be too much, but I think I want more like a quarter of a circle. And they talk you through it. Information is great, but the pattern making book has even more detailed information. It doesn't matter which edition of the pattern making book you look at, they all kind of have the same information for circle skirts. So what I decided to do was, so I decided that 10 inches is what I wanted for my gathering up at the top for the notches. So I'm pretending that 10 inches is the circumference of the waist that I want. The waist. And then I want a quarter circle. So they have a column here, and I can just go down to the 10-inch circumference, and I can use this measurement, 6 3/8, my fulcrum, my like my compass. So this ruler is 6 inches. I could stab one end of my 6 inches down and put a pencil on the other end and draw a quarter of a circle. And my circumference of that should be 10. And then I just measure down however. So I did that a couple of different ways. So I tried that out. So my first circle that I drafted, I don't know if you can see the shadow of the two different circles, but the first one that I drafted had roughly roughly 6 inches worth of gathering. So that's this one. And I used a quarter circle. And so let me go back over here. So that has less gathering at the top. And so that looks like this. So hopefully that shows up on camera. Like what's happening at the top here is less than what's happening at the top here. But down here, I'm getting these flares that look a lot more like my inspiration picture, right? So I think we're on the right track with a circle. So I tried an even bigger circle. So this one has, because I like the gathering at the top on the other one. So this one has 7. So this one has closer to the 10 inches of gathering. So let me, oops, remove this. And then kind of roughly gather it into the 2-inch space, roughly. So it depends on the fabric. Because if your fabric is heavy, then this is going to weigh too much. But I feel like that's even closer to what I want, to make it look like my inspiration photo. So let me show you one more thing you can do. So you can draft your circle, and I'll show you a tool that I use. Let's see if I can find it over here. Yeah. And I'll show you how to do it with a tape measure as well. So this is a compass ruler. And so I can use that chart that's in my textbook. And so it said that for 10 inches, a 10-inch circumference on a quarter circle, I need to have my radius at 6 3/8. That doesn't sound right, but we'll pretend it is for right now. And so what I do is I get a right angle. Right, so just like a corner. Okay, so I just have a corner there, just a 90-degree angle. And what I do is I put the point into the corner, and then I draw the radius of my circle. My book is in the way. Now, like I said, that I must be remembering that wrong, because when I measure this, it looks like way more than 10. Oh no, it's pretty close. It's a little bit more than 10. So now I have the circle that's going to be the part that's going to gather. And then what I do is from that spot, I measure down the length that I want it on each of these two corners. And then I have a quarter of a circle. And I can just kind of measure out from this circle. Like, say I want my sash to be 27 inches long. I just kind of like giant seam allowance. I measure down from this waist circle, 27 inches, 27 inches, 27 inches, like rays of the sun. And then I connect those dots into a curve on the bottom. Another thing I can do if I don't have this cute compass rule is you can poke a hole in your tape measure. I have a tape measure that has a hole in it. So I can put that on my corner and stick a tack in it. And then I can do it this way. I can measure from the hole in my tape measure. I can measure that 6 3/8 on my tape measure. So I'm kind of ignoring the measurements on my tape measure. And I'm using a ruler. Let me flip it over. So I'm using a ruler to measure from the hole in my tape measure to the radius of my circle. And then I stick a pin through moved my pins away. I keep putting things away. So then I stick a pin into my tape measure where my radius is, and then I stick that pin into the corner of the angle that I drew, and then I stick my pencil into the hole, and I draw my radius that way to draw my waist. And then from there, whatever that radius is, I add the length. So say it's 27 inches, so I add the length, and then whatever that is, I put my pin in my tape measure. Might need a friend to help me put a pencil in the hole of my tape measure, get it all nice and taut, and then just drag the tape measure from edge to edge, and that'll give me my circle. So we saw how to draw the sash just by gathering the same distance. So this is a rectangle that's 10 inches wide all the way down. And then this is a circle that I just showed you, or a quarter circle that I just showed you how to draft, with 10 inches for the circumference, and then a quarter circle that's the length of my skirt from the bottom of my yoke to the bottom of my. The next way I'm going to show you is kind of like drafting the circle, and kind of like a cross between drafting the pleats that you did in 1A. So it's called slash and spread. So what I can do is clear off my table. Let me pause this while I clear off my table. Okay, so I need some measurements. We already know just from testing by crinkling fabric up in our hands that we feel like, you know, without knowing what fabric we're going to use or whatever, we think we like 10 inches of gathering or 10 inches of gathering on a curve. And we want more fullness at the bottom so that we get prettier flares than we do with this straight piece, right? This is kind of wah wah, whereas this is like more like our example, our inspiration. So I need to know how long I want this, whether I'm drafting my circle or drafting a rectangle or doing what I'm about to do. So I just measured from the bottom of my yoke seam where I want my knot to go, or wherever you want your knot to go, right? Just from wherever you want your knot to go to the length that you want. I want mine just a teeny bit longer than my skirt, I think. So I have that measurement, which I need that no matter which method I was using. I figured out how much gathering I wanted, and I don't really know what fabric I'm using yet, but with the muslin, the 10 inches looks good. So 10 inches to gather into my little 2-inch knot. So that's what looks good to me right now. So I have some brown paper, like I'm kind of improvising. It's not really brown paper, but pretend with me. So I'll cut 10 inches of dot paper because that's how much gathering I want into my knot. And then I want 27 inches in length before I think about any seam allowance or anything. And that's just determined by the skirt length that I currently have on the form. So I will cut myself a rectangle of paper that is approximately the width and the length of that first rectangle that we gathered up and found that it was a little lackluster. And then I have my corner that I drew here, right? So it's just a right angle, a 90-degree angle. So if I was doing this on dot paper, I might follow one row of letters and numbers and follow another row and just give myself a right angle. So then I'll just divide this piece of paper up into, I'm going to do 1-inch segments. This is also kind of reminiscent of the way I showed you to true the armhole on the front, side front bodice. So I'm just drawing lines that are about 1 inch apart. And I'm going to go ahead and do this on paper instead of muslin. And then I would cut this shape out of muslin to test it. Just drape it on the form and see what I think. And then I can adjust my paper pattern if I need to, or adjust my muslin and then true that to my paper pattern. And I don't have to do 1 inch. Now that I think about it, maybe I'll show you how to do this with, I've drawn 1 inch lines, but maybe I'll slash and spread with 2 inch lines. I'll talk to you about what I'm thinking right now. Let me just finish drawing these lines. Okay, if we look in the upper corner where we have our inspiration picture, we see that at the bottom of the sash, there's some flares. We could count the flares. I think I see 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 or 4 flares. So maybe I decide that I want to make this have 3 or 4 flares. So let's see if I do, I'm just experimenting right now. So this could be 1 flare. This could be 2 flares. This could be 3 flares. And this could be 4 flares. So yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'll cut every 2 inches instead of every inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut along the line that I decide, whether it's the 1 or the 2, and I'll cut all the way up to the other end, but not through it, just so that I have a little hinge. So I'm deciding that I'm going to cut every 2 inches. So I'll have my flares every 2 inches. And this doesn't have to be super precise. I'm chopping very sloppily just to kind of make a point. So I'm chopping almost to the top. And then I'll take this and I will tape my first one down on that angle that I drew. So one will be on the straight line of the angle that I drew. And then the rest, I'll just kind of, I'm gonna do a little clip at the top just to help me bend. So I'm not clipping all the way through. I want the paper to still be hinged and connected so I can move it without them coming disconnected. And so what I'll do is I'll bend these and I'll decide each of those 1, 2, 3, 4 flares, how big do I think they are? So let's say I think those flares look like they're 4 inches. So then I will spread this piece of paper 4 inches apart. And once I decide what I want, I would tape these down. So right now I'm just in the experimentation phase. So this gives me 1 4-inch flare. Then I could come over here and measure from this strip of paper and make the next one 4 inches apart. And make sure that this is flat up here. So maybe I'll put my ruler for right now to hold these down, and then put my scissors on it. Just to keep this top part from bending, because even though I'm bending the line, I want it to stay 10 inches, because that's the gathering that I decided that I liked. So I want to control that. And then I'll come down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and move this guy to here. And then weigh him down. So move my ruler to keep these flat. So I want them to stay 27 inches long, and I want this bent part to stay 10 inches long. So here, and I measure another 4 inches. And then I move this guy. So now what I would do is I would tape these down, give myself a little margin, maybe like a 1-inch margin all the way around, kind of like 1-inch seam allowance-ish, and then cut this out, and then that is template, and I would cut that out of muslin, and then try that on the dress form and see if I like that. And if I don't, I can take this template off of the brown paper and then spread these even more. Maybe I decide that 4 4-inch flares is not enough, and instead I want 4 6-inch flares. So I get to decide and direct my flares. Up here, if you don't true this, it's kind of angular. And if it was just a skirt that we were putting on the body, those angles would help direct the flares. Because we're gathering this up, it won't make that much of a difference. So now you know several ways to try and make the sash. One way is just to cut a rectangle and gather it. But I feel like when you get the kind of gathering you want up at the knot, it doesn't look so good down at the hem. You can use the formula in your book to draft a quarter circle, or you can use the slash and spread method. Decide how much gathering you want with any of the methods. You decide how much gathering you want. With any of the methods, you decide how long you want your piece to be. So you can either measure your skirt on the form from wherever you want the knot to be to however long you want your flare to be. Or you can take the length of this, what is that, the left side piece, your left side drape or your left side pattern, and from where it attaches to the yoke to the hem on the princess seam, you can use that as your length. And then you can make a rectangle of paper that is the length that you want and the amount of gathering you want, and you can take that rectangle and you can slash and spread it, deciding how much flare you want at the bottom. So you get to choose. Are you going to draft a fraction of a circle, or are you going to slash and spread? I'll go ahead and tape this down and cut it out of muslin and put it on the form, and then we can look at it so you can decide what you like.